Everyone. Today we will discuss Saint Thomas Aquinas and his contribution to the political philosophy. Uh, now, before we go into Saint Thomas state of nature, we'll discuss a little bit of who Saint Thomas was and how actually he uh, has taken St. Augustine's thought into a different direction. So, um, before we begin, uh, St. Thomas, he lived around the uh, 13th century, you can say, and he's a chief spokesperson of medieval scholasticism. Uh, because during that period, St. Thomas, also during that period, education was more in the form of scholastic activities. He was born, in Aquino, in Italy, in a place known Aquino, from where he got his title of Aquinas. So he basically was from the Italian aristocratic family, which means that his family was well acquainted with the European kings and emperors, and they had that kind of influence with the rulers of the time. But Saint Thomas Aquinas, he surrendered his title of being a count in order to join the Dominican order, which means to join one of the Catholic congregations to become a priest. And of course, later he even is considered as the, as the fathers of the church, or rather the doctors of the church, or rather the people who developed doctrine for the church. So he joined, as I said, the Dominican order by giving up his title, as making a lot of sacrifices. And after which he went to study in Naples, Cologne, Paris, and most of his philosophical and theological writings and lectures were actually given in Paris. Unfortunately, with his wide ranging knowledge and experience and volumes of writings, he died at a very young age of 48 years. And within that span of his life, he wrote about 70 books on various subjects and in various volumes. He actually summarized the scholastic philosophy of that particular period in time. So, one of the most important aspect or of the contributions of Saint Thomas Aquinas was his, was his effort to incorporate Aristotelianism, or the writings of Aristotle, into Christian theological thought, Christian philosophy, and also to develop this as the church doctrine in the future. Of course, during his lifespan, or during the time when he was writing, Thomas Aquinas was being rejected by the church. He was, he had to encounter a lot of resistance from the church, because that period of time the church was still in its very orthodox nature. And according to Aristotle, the church did not understand the transition of the society from, one of ecclesiastical dominated society into society with this emerging um, as democratic and individual liberty and freedom was being gradually gaining ground as the, as the day-to-day philosophy. So uh, two of his very important books are on kingship and the sum of theology, or summa theologica. or the sum of theology. And in the sum of theology, Summa Theologica, uh, Saint Thomas Aquinas, he wrote this book in a question answer form, which means it was he wrote this book uh, in the form of dialogue to the various questions that was prevailing at that point of time. Now, coming back to his philosophical contribution, as I said earlier, you see, Saint Augustine, in his theological writings or in his philosophical writings, he actually followed the path of Plato, or rather, he made synthesis between Platonism and Christianity. He tried to incorporate the teachings of Plato into the teaching of the Bible, the teaching of Christ, and teaching of the Old Testament to uh, uh, to actually tell us, or to actually say basically that there is the philosopher king, there is the ultimate God, and this God actually is different from human being because he has the the creativity or the unique ness of being graceful, or he has the capacity to deliver grace, mercy, and to liberate human being. So, but you see, by the time Saint Thomas Aquinas was writing, the social and political as well as the theological scene had already changed. And while Augustine insisted that Christianity was faith, Christianity need not necessarily have logic. You need not necessarily explain what is Christian faith. You only have to believe in God. In by the time of Thomas Aquinas, this is no more the case because people have started asking, what should be the role of Christianity in human society? How is Christianity going to contribute to the development and the growth of human society? How are they going to deliver justice? How is Christianity is going to engage itself with culture and so on and so forth? So it is here that Saint Thomas will deviate from the teaching of Augustine, and he will therefore provide us the leadership in terms of bringing or synthesizing Aristotelian thought into the Christian thought, and therefore, with this, it is said that Saint Thomas gained more prominence during those days other than Saint Augustine. You see, now, before Thomas Aquinas, uh, the church or the literatures in the church, or you can say the ecclesiastical class, as we have already discussed, the two-sword theory, where the state is believed to be under the control of the church, or the state should be under the control of the church, or that the state has to obey the dictats of the ecclesiastical class. So therefore, before Thomas Aquinas came into the picture, the religious leaders believed that the state was ordained by God, and therefore the governments are only instruments devised by God to punish the evildoers in the society. Or the state has to act at the behest of the moral authority of the church. Therefore, the state has to punish those people who go astray from the teaching of the church, or the evildoers. So therefore, By this time, Saint Aquinas and other people believe that such a dictate or such an idea that the state is actually the product for for the punishment of the evildoers is actually the product of the unfamiliarity with Aristotle ideas or Aristotelian thought. Uh, so therefore, uh, Thomas Aquinas vehemently or tried his every effort to synthesize and he spoke and he revived Aristotle ideas on politics, on political thought, on political ideas, especially with synthesizing that with the teaching of the church. So, as I said, you see, in Summa Theologica, or the sum of theology, Saint Thomas he started with the same methodology that Aristotle used. That is by going back into the state of nature. You see, by going back into the state of nature. And therefore, like Aristotle, who believed that the society was a good, the state of nature was a state of, goodness all around, he, St. Thomas argued, or he says, that in the state of nature there was no slavery, there was only the state of innocence. Everybody was innocent. Which means in the beginning of the, before the, the establishment of any social political organization or any civil society, or before people started coming together to form the idea of state or government. So during this time, he says, there was no dominance of man over man. There was no dominance of man over man. So, like Aristotle, he says that man is by nature a social animal. Aristotle says that man is by nature a political animal. But Aristotle, very close to that, he says that man is by nature a social animal. Therefore, when man is a social animal, man at some point of time thought that there was a need for them to come together, to form into a society or to work together for some common good. Okay, so man at some point of time realized that he cannot achieve everything by himself, or one family cannot achieve everything on their own. They had to depend on others. So that first idea of coming together to form a society was an idea which was very innocent, the state of innocence. Okay, it was the state of innocence. Society was also in the state of innocence. Everybody then said, okay, yes, since you can produce rice, I can produce clothing, another person can produce, can fetch us water, another, maybe another person can provide us security, and so on and so forth. Let us come together. This is the state of innocence. So therefore, when people started coming together, the social life for many members was for the purpose of common good. So when people started coming together, it was with one important purpose, and that is for the common good. I serve you, you serve me, we serve others. All members, he said, therefore must aim at that common end or that common good. And therefore, they gathered together with this idea of common good in the state of innocence. They gathered together to single out what was their common good and their common end. You know, so therefore, he says that this gathering of people together, or the assembly of men in the state of nature for the common good, is the beginning of the rise of social organization, or rather civil society. It is the beginning of the coming together to form a social organization, or the civil society. So the civil society, he says, has its origin in the sociability of man, which means social organization or civil society has its origin in the nature of man, and that is his being a social animal. Okay, a man being a social animal. So Aquinas, or Thomas Aquinas, he believed, he argued that it is the fact that all men, it is the fact that of all men, there may be one man who is superior in excellence. So while we gather together, definitely there should be one person who is very smart, very active, capable, who has the skill to organize, who has the skill to lead, and therefore he must be superior. He must be superior in excellence. If nobody actually ever initiated this coming together would not have taken place. Certainly, somebody developed or conceptualized this idea, and therefore they came together. It is quite. He says that it is quite natural that superior man should be vested with the power of administration. Since this man is superior in excellence, he has indicated all skills to lead. Therefore, it is natural that people have vested upon him with the authority to govern, or with the authority to administer that civil society or that social organization. So, therefore, the aim of that civil society, or that social organization, or rather the government that was formed through this social contract, or when people came together, was the common welfare, and the common welfare of the people, and the civitas, or rather of moving towards civilization. So therefore, the city, or the civitas, or the state, with this coming together, they also aim at being self-sufficient, or self-sufficing and perfect association, which means that when they try to come together, they have an idea that they should have enough of all that they need within their own territory, within their own social organization. Uh, so so therefore, when Saint Thomas talk about this, we can certainly see that there is similarity of Aristotle thought along with that of Saint Thomas. However, Saint Thomas, he went further, you know, from the Aristotelian, confine of the boundary of the city-state. He thought of, Aristotle, Saint Aquinas being also influenced by Christian thought, and by the Bible, and so on and so forth. He thought of good life and welfare of the citizens, or the inhabitants of that social organization, or of that civil society, or that city state. So, deviating from the biblical teaching, he thought of the worldly concern. And therefore, he says that man cannot remain satisfied without the goodness and the virtuousness, or without goodness and virtue. So, what is needed is, in this mortal world, he says man cannot be just happy with everything that he has, but he will also try to think as to what is ethical, what is moral, what is right, and what is wrong. So, therefore, man will now, after attaining this social organization, will also try to enjoy the company with God. He will try to see as to what is good and what is right, and therefore he will turn to God and to the company of God. So, therefore, here it is here that, as I said earlier, Thomas Aquinas will deviate from Aristotle's man-centered values, and he will try to develop what is uh, uh, to be called as God-centered values. God-centered values. Now, Berkey, one of the scholars of Thomas Aquinas, he wrote, and I quote, with Aquinas, political conservatism has a better foundation, but the same token, but by the same token, it is also more moderate, cheerful, and discerning. So, therefore, he says he's king of conservatism. Augustine's Christianity, he says, enjoins us to accept, not enthusiastically, but with God's grace, a strange and hostile world. You know, Saint Augustine, he kept insisting that the world is hostile, but there is strange grace of God, mercy of God. The Christian vision of Aquinas is the plea that we wholeheartedly accept a world which has, in the meantime, become friendly and Christian. So, therefore, Saint Aquinas, according to Berkey, is leading us into the theological thought and ideas that, the world is becoming friendly, and it is becoming Christianized. So this is what this is the contribution of Saint Thomas Aquinas. Now, in order to cut things short to make it easy, now we go to the next political ideas of Aristotle. I mean, we'll talk about we will now talk about the form of governments. Just like Aristotle, or following Aristotle classification of state, uh, um, Thomas Aquinas says that there are two types of government. One that aims at the welfare of the ruler, and, and the other that seeks the welfare of all men. Just like Aristotle, one like we have, the types of government. One government will aim at the welfare of the rulers, and the other will aim at the welfare of the citizens or the people at large. So he says the latter type of government is just an ideal, which means the government that provides for everybody is ideal and just. So you see, Aristotle gave two classification of government: one which is ideal, and the other one which is perverted. In the ideal, he says kingship, polity, and aristocracy, and perverted tyranny, oligarchy, and democracy. So in the same way, Saint Aquinas also talk of the two types of government. He says the perverted governments are tyranny, oligarchy, and democracy. What is tyranny? Tyranny is imposition of everything, use of force, and so on and so forth by one person. Oligarchy, group of people coming together to take benefit from their authority, their own authority. And democracy, you see, Saint Aquinas believe that democracy will be in a democracy. What will happen is the rich will take advantage of the poor, the strong will take advantage of the weak, the majority will take advantage over the minority, and therefore the ideal is the kingship, polity, and aristocracy. So, so therefore, In the ideal form of government, the authority subjects its interest to the interest of the multitude. Okay, subject their own interest to the interest of the multitude. The welfare of the entire society will be the only aim uh, of the ideal government. So therefore, you see, uh, here Saint Aquinas will differ or deviate from Aristotle because he supports a kingship, while Aristotle did not. Therefore, he departs from Aristotle and he has his own consideration for this. He says that the unity of the state is paramount. You know, for in order to be able to obtain the unity of the state, he says that can be achieved only if power is concentrated in the hand of a single man or in the hand of an individual. Otherwise, if power is devised or deliberated to other people, there will be dissension, and therefore he says monarch is the best form of government. The rule of one man, he says, is more useful than the rule of many because it will allow him to take quick decision. He says every natural governance is the governance by one person. And the best, it is, therefore, the rule of one person is best for human multitude to be ruled by one. Okay. So this is what he says. So therefore, in the Saint Aquinas idea, monarchy is the best form of government because it can bring unity, it can control the sentient, and it is a natural form of governance. Because even in the state of nature, as we have seen, one individual would have shown his excellence more than others. Now we come to the functions of governments. Here, in this particular aspect, as Aquinas was influenced, one, by Aristotle, and two, by the Bible. Okay, so there are two aspects of Aquinas' idea of the function of governance. So therefore, according to Aquinas, the most important function of the state of the government is to maintain and promote rights and moral living of all its subjects. To promote rights and moral living of all its subjects. And that is the moral purpose of the state. And this moral purpose of the state is of paramount importance. Second is the function of the government is to ensure the general welfare of its people. So therefore, Aquinas says that the duty of every ruler is to ensure that the citizens are happy and they live a virtuous life. They are happy and they live a virtuous life. So like Aristotle, he believed that the government must be able to obtain the unity of state. And Aquinas went on further to say that the government, along with this responsibility of the state to obtain unity, the state also, or the government has also the responsibility to provide security of all its citizens and also to defend its people from external aggression. So the failure, he says, the failure of the state to provide security and to defend its people will jeopardize the moral rights of living citizens or the moral rights of the citizens for which the contract has been agreed upon. So in line with the Bible teaching, he says the prince or the ruler has to keep he has to keep the road safe. He has to ensure that everybody is having a safe life and everybody is free. So it is, he says, with the intention, it is the intention of God that everything should be in order. Okay. So therefore, Aristotle even suggested that the state should have control over number, weights, and measures, so that everybody will be delivered justice, which means the number should be equal to all, the weight should be equal to all, and the measure should be equal to all. So therefore, if I'm given the five numbers of apple from the state should give five number of apples to every other citizens. You know, if I'm given 1 kg of rice by the state, or, yeah, ration, 1 kg of rice through the ration of the state should give equally to all. And if I'm being given 1 acre of land, everybody should be given 1 acre of land. So there should be order, there should be control over these very important aspects. So God, so therefore the government has to carefully also look after the poor. This is what Aquinas is arguing. Being influenced by the Bible, he says that the government should be the government, more importantly, for the weak, for the poor, for the downtrodden. This is what Christianity has. This is what Christianity uh, has taught humanity over 2,000 years. Always to have sympathy towards the weak, the suffering, and the struggling community. So, therefore, uh, Thomas Aquinas also believed that the prince should work for the alleviation of people's sorrows and sufferings, and therefore the most this should become one of the most important political doctrine for any state or any government. Okay. So with this, I will end my lecture here. We will continue again tomorrow. I would like to hear from you if you have any questions now. Please. Thank you very much. If any question, please address to me now.